News. Hey, everybody, welcome. We're going to just give a couple of minutes here before we get started for uh, other people to log on. We had a bunch of registrations for this event tonight. I'm excited. Thanks for being here and participating with us. Hopefully, we will be able to bring you some good content, some good information about property management tonight. We're specifically going to talk about some of the ins and outs and what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. So I'm glad that you're here, but just we'll give it another minute or so and let some more people log on. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great, man. Super excited to be here.
Yeah. Joshua, just a little technical thing. Any chance you have a headset? You got a echo.
I don't have a headset on me, unfortunately.
Okay. Sound like you're in the subway tonight.
I'm sorry about that. Dang, I wish I had that prepared.
No, that's all right. Don't worry about it. We'll have rain clean it up a little bit. So
Yeah, I can hear you pretty good, Joshua. It doesn't sound too bad.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Just so you know, the chat is open. We're going to make sure everybody stays muted, and we will take any questions anybody has as we go through tonight. The Q&A or from the chat. The chat's been enabled, so feel free. Glad that you're here. I'll kick this off. I'm Mike Morawski. I am with Resilience Equity. We are a capital raise company and a multi-family sponsor and operator. So we buy multi-family properties, we bring them to the market, and then we partner with individual investors to share in those profits. The good news around that is we don't do any property management. We third party everything that we do. So whether we're in Florida, or Texas, or Oklahoma, some of the other markets, and honestly, right now we're monitoring about 40 submarkets around the country, watching deals and looking at deals that are coming to the market. So lots of good opportunity out there today. Lots of opportunity for partnerships and for people to join in. So glad everybody's here tonight. As I mentioned, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. We'll get those answered. And Mike, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, great to see everybody. Great to see you, Mike and Joshua. I'm Mike Angelo. I'm a managing partner at Nimble Capital Group. We are also a multifamily investment company. We focus on large value add apartments here in Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma. We have about 700 doors under our belt. So partnered with Mike on a few different operations, and we also third party. So we rely on the experts to run our properties for us. And I'm also a passive investor. And so I passively invest. That's what I started with in multifamily. And then I became active over the last couple of years.
Well, you'll be glad to know, Mike, that Joshua is the property manager for one of the properties that you are a passive investor in tonight. So,
Perfect. Well, I'll have some questions for you. So yeah, good stuff.
Ready?
so
That's
good.
awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for being here, Mike. Appreciate it. Always love doing this with you, and we always have a good time. So, Joshua, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes. How's it going, everybody? So my name is Joshua Adlam, and I'm with Atrium Management Company. We are a third-party property management company based out of Orlando, Florida, and we currently manage 5,000 units in the Central Florida area. I primarily cover the Tampa and Lakeland market, in which we manage about 1,000 units. So I've been in with the company for the last 5 years, and just super excited to be able to help great guys like Mike on their syndications and their multifamily deals.
Awesome. Glad that you're here, Joshua. Thanks for doing this. And you know what's kind of interesting is that I think when we started using Atrium, you guys only at that time had about 3,000 doors that you were managing. So you've really taken a step up in the last 2.5 years. That's awesome.
Yes, I appreciate that. We were at 3,000 doors. We acquired a few companies and were able to grow. So it's been a huge transition for us the last 2 years.
Yeah, good. And you know what's really nice, and I'll just give you kind of some accolades, is even with the growth that you've had, you guys have not let your eye off the ball. You've continued to push the fundamentals on our property and help us reach our goals and get us there. Hey, Mike, great question. If everybody on the chat tonight would just throw their name and where they're calling in from into the chat, let's make sure that's working. And love to say hi to everybody and see where you're from. So if you put your name and where you're calling in from tonight, that'd be great. And here's what's kind of interesting, right? I'm on the West Coast, and Mike, you and I are on the same time zone now, right?
Yep, I'm
So
in Arizona, but yep,
yeah,
we're on the
so
same.
it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Josh was on the East Coast, right? And so it's
Yes.
like 7 there.
7
So if
p.m.
you're
here.
in the central time zone area, it's only 6 o'clock. Um, so Joshua, let's kick this off. Here's what I'd like you to do. Why don't you explain to people, in a couple of minutes, what property management actually is? And I ask this because I think that the property management team never
Mhm,
gets accolades. And
mhm.
and they're the ones that do all the heavy lifting. The property managers, whether they're on-site people or whether they're third-party companies overseeing on-site people, there's a lot of heavy lifting that goes into it. And there's a so why don't you talk a little bit about exactly what you do?
Absolutely, happy to. It's funny that you asked that question because when I first got started in the industry right after college, and my mentor asked me to be a property manager, I had no idea what that was. And so 5 years later, it's full circle. So simply put, what a property manager is, a property management, I like to look at it as being a high level problem solver. And so essentially, when it comes to real estate deals, we are the operation side of making that deal perform. So essentially, we work with the residents in collecting rent, handling all work orders and issues that may come about in the property. We handle all renovations. We handle all coordination of contract services and make sure that the property flows as smoothly as possible. So essentially, look at us as the right hand man to make sure that everything is going smoothly and fluently with the property.
Awesome. And one of the things I know for sure is that there's a big difference between property management and asset management,
Mm,
and two separate buckets of work that needs to get done. And asset management, we're not going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about property management. Mike and I are going to come back in the next couple of weeks as part of our webinar series we've been doing. And we're going to talk specifically about asset management and how we play a big role in that and the things we look out for. But Mike, any pressing questions up front that you want to ask Joshua?
Yeah, I was more of a comment. I mentioned I'm a passive investor, and I've talked to active investors all the time. And to your point earlier, PMs don't get enough accolades for the hard work you do, because you're in the grind, you're in the trenches. Call it collecting rent. I just had a really good experience where our PM had to go to court and won an
mm.
eviction trial. I mean, these are things that you guys got to roll up your sleeves and get dirty sometimes, and I think it's something that it's important to have great PM, but really appreciate what they do, because you could have a great business plan and it can go to hell in a handbasket if you don't have someone executing it right. So I appreciate what you guys do. That was just want to make that comment that it's a lot.
Absolutely. That's greatly appreciated. And to your point, I think a lot of people on social media and just in general, they see the highlights of investing in real estate and being part of a syndication or just a deal in general, and they don't truly understand the ins and outs that go in the day to day to make it work. And so, similar to what you just said, evictions, handling, chasing late payments, being able to get those 3 a.m. calls when a random pipe bursts in the ceiling or a toilet is clogged up and flooding the unit. Those are the things that we handle on a daily basis, and we really take pride in and not having to have our owners stress about. And so I like to really think of us as, like I said earlier, the owner's right hand man, but more of a stress reliever for them. While you're on the West Coast and 4 o'clock enjoying the sunset, if anything happens down here, our team is ready, squared away to handle it. And so we just try to be the eyes and ears, the boots on the ground, just on the day to day to kind of help sure the property is running fine.
Yeah, I was wondering maybe you could walk through for the investors or for the folks on the call, like what's the structure look like your role. And I know sometimes I mean, I don't know if you're a leasing manager on the ground or if you have a team that does that. Like, because and let's use like a 100 unit apartment complex. That's really where Mike and I kind of focus on 100 units and bigger. What's that
Yeah.
structure look like to kind of again provide visibility for folks?
Yeah, so on a deal that size, typically, we'll have an on-site manager that is there full time. And essentially, what their role is they want to make sure that every tenant is paying rent and rent on time. They want to handle all the collections. Any bad tenant, that pays late, they want to be able to issue 3-day notices. They want to be able to have these conversations, to try to get payments in. That is I would say, the main role of the on-site property manager. Amongst other things that they want to really tackle, any issues on the ground, maintenance, they want to be able to handle. So we have an on-site maintenance tech, usually for deals of that size. And they're going in handling small work orders, random AC leaks, toilet leaks, any issues with sinks or, random light fixtures. They want to be able to adequately help that, for our team and our investors. But really, our staff, I would say, what really kind of helps us with staffing is we really invest in our staff. How we do that is by encouraging them to read books. We really pride ourselves on having a book club in which we read tons of books each month to really shape our minds. One of our books that we love to read is um, Darren Hardy, The Compound Effect. That's a book for us that really reigns true for us in our industry. And so we really try to build good habits by investing in our team and that make sure that they're educated on, just the self-development aspect of, being a property manager. And then going into the industry stuff, we always have them attend our normal law classes. We have them make sure that they're licensed, so they're aware of all Florida state laws and codes and regulations. And then we just try to create an environment that people want to come to work. Kind of like as you guys mentioned, it's not always fun as far as the private management side, dealing with angry residents, dealing with headaches and situations. So we try to create an environment and a staffing structure that promotes self-development, self-growth, and then allows the individual to be the best versions of themselves by just having the freedom to do the things that they like to do.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I think that's why Mike partnered with you guys is that employee focus is important, right? Because if you take care of your employees, they usually will take care of your property. So that's good to hear. So if I understand correctly, right, you're managing a portfolio in Florida, and that's a little bit smaller than the 100 unit. And so, how is that trickier to oversee? And what have you been doing there, Mike? If I'm taking this down a rabbit hole, just let me know.
No. Yeah, I have one quick question though.
Yeah,
With your time and tenure in the business, I'm sure you've seen some pretty interesting situations,
yeah.
funny stories, sad stories. Why don't you tell us a funny story, one of the funniest things you've seen or experienced in doing what you're doing?
Man, I have like, oh my goodness, just a plethora of stories that I could pull from. Off the top of my head, one of the funniest stories that I can think of is we were managing a building about a year or two ago. And, a lot of times we're coming into situations that are value add deals. And so some of these boutique assets. And so essentially, we were managing the property. And I remember we took over and we were doing like probably about 2 weeks into, we were doing just like our follow up. Hey, how you guys enjoying the transition? Kind of just touching base. And I remember the resident told me, he was like, "Hey, Joshua, like I'm moving out, on this date." So I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I go to check in on the move out, and the gentleman was carrying the refrigerator out of the unit and putting it along his truck. I had never seen a resident take all the appliances out of the unit and think like that made sense. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're still in our fridge? He's like, oh man, the previous owner said I could have it when I moved in. And I'm like, this is a brand new stainless steel fridge. I'm like, dude, that makes no sense at all. So that's just one of the few many things that I've seen just on the comedic side, like a resident moving out and thinking that he could take the appliances with him. That was just the craziest thing that I ever saw.
Yeah, it's either that or they steal them right after you do the rehab and haven't even moved anybody in yet.
Exactly.
Well,
So Mike had asked, what's the difference between managing 100 units versus a smaller property, like one of ours in Florida, the 40 units.
Yeah, so the biggest difference is the staffing structure. So on an on-site building, 100 units plus, you'll have a small staff of 2 to 3 people, depending upon how many units. With we call the smaller properties the boutique management or multifamily buildings, and so on those you kind of have a different structure. So you have a leasing coordinator, a property manager, and then you have what's called an asset manager. So usually it's a team of 3 or 4. We also have virtual assistants that help us out with a lot of our admin work. But for a 40 unit or boutique property, we structure them into what they're called pod groups or property groups. And so each property is given to an asset manager of I would say a group of about 250 to 350 units. And so that asset manager is basically in charge of managing that portfolio along with all the other, smaller boutique properties. And I think that works a lot for these smaller assets because you get a little bit more hands-on attention. So you have a property manager that is directly responsible for handling your leasing and for all your information, and then you have a leasing coordinator that's on site, dealing with everything that needs to be handled as well. So the structure is a little bit different. Again, we like to do property groups, and it's like a subset of smaller boutique assets that is kind of thrown into a portfolio, and then you have that direct attention to contact your asset manager, property manager, leasing coordinator whenever you like. So it's a little bit different, but we still try to give that hands-on approach. I know Mike is very familiar with this team in Tampa with Trinity and myself and a few other people. So that's kind of the difference between the management styles.
Yeah, that makes sense. I appreciate that breakdown. That's great. What do you see today? Florida's booming, Tampa's booming. I mean, are you guys able to handle all of this? Again, it's one more reason that we hire third-party managers, but like getting all those inbound phone calls and screening tenants, how is the demand in that market? And I'm just picking that Tampa market. You can feel free to talk about, all the other properties you oversee. But
Yes.
yeah.
So in general, I'm sure as everyone on this call kind of knows, Florida is a great place to live, great place to be. Population growth is growing at 3 to 4% every year. So really in the last, I would say 2 to 3 years, we've had an influx of people move here from the West Coast, from the North, wanting to come in a state where it's tax free. You're not taxed on your wages, and then you're able to buy real estate, in a great area, appreciating area. So Florida has really expanded for us a lot. In regards to the demand, I think what has helped us tremendously is just having our systems in place. So we really have things streamlined to where we can be able to take on a new property and add it into a portfolio and have it kind of transition seamlessly. The biggest thing that we really do is one, we really prioritize communication. One of our company mantras is just answer the phone. So we really are big on calling all of our owners, all of our vendors, all of our residents, and having that one-on-one touch point, being able to touch base. And then we have platforms that we use. So Appfolio is kind of our main CRM for all of our tenant login information. That's where tenants pay rent. That's where they can go in, send us a text or email if they have any questions about anything. And that's really been helpful for us as far as adding new management portfolios. The next thing is Property Mail. That's our kind of like our maintenance platform. So anytime a resident has a work order, they can log in, submit a mail, and then we can just assign it to the correct vendor to be able to access their unit and to be able to knock out the work order within 24 hours. And then Tenant Turner, that's our leasing platform that allowed us to syndicate our listings to about 40 different sites. So we can track all leads and track all showings from that platform. So again, just adding those processes in to where we can be able to adequately communicate with owners, communicate with leasing, and to be able to move quickly helps us really, I would say, meet with the demand of the market and just Florida and the industry in general.
That's great. So using software technology, maybe some AI now coming in.
Hey,
To
we
help.
got to stay with the times. We have to stay with the times. So AI, it's very important.
So,
Very good.
that's an interesting point, right? Is technology. I think technology is really important in what we do from basically from the tenant side to the management side, from the management side to the owner side. All those communications need to be in place. The really property management, you're a liaison to us, right? We never talk to a tenant. You handle all the tenants and those relationships, and they are relationships really. But there's a number of different property management software systems out there. What
Yeah.
do you guys use? Why do you use that one? Do you think there's something better? Or, if you went down the list, what's the worst one to be using and the best one to be using?
Yeah, so I have experience mainly with that folio. That's kind of our main one. We have a great relationship with their founders, their principals, and so we kind of just built using their platform off of that relationship. I've had some experience with Yardi. That is another popular, company that has a pretty good CRM in the industry. They can do, a little bit more things in regards to, managing a bunch of bigger properties and kind of handling it in that regard. But Appfolio is our main one. I really like it because they are very integrated into multiple other, I would say, property management apps or software. So they're when it comes to work orders, as soon as a resident is onboarded to Appfolio, they're automatically onboarded into Property Mailed. And so we don't have to create an account. It automatically does it and it sends them an invite. And so it's way easier to communicate and get them set up with vendors because they're automatically integrated through that site. The same thing with Tenant Turner. As soon as we post a property on AppFolio, we're able to automatically syndicate it to Tenant Turner, which tracks all of our leads. And so as soon as we press the post the website button on AppFolio, Tenant Turner automatically lists it, links it, then lists it, and then we're able to track it from every major site to see, hey, this lead came from Zumper, this lead came from Zillow, this lead came from apartments.com. And so for us, we just have found great success with leasing when it comes to management through AppFolio. And so we really love it. And it's been a great benefit for us.
And Mike, I know that that your other property management companies you use Entrata on
Mhm.
some of your properties, and I'm not sure what else, but do you have a preference between either system? Here's what I like about AppFolio is we get on our weekly we're bi-weekly now on our asset management calls with Joshua and his team, and he can right away just pull the numbers up. He can show me uh, the T12. We can see what the revenue's been. We can see where the expenses are. If I say, hey, can we look back 30 days, 60 days, he can do it instantaneously. He knows where everything is. And it really helps from the standpoint of being able to know the numbers. And we all know the math never lies, right? But
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
can really know the numbers about occupancy, about rent collections, about evictions, about repairs, about major repairs, tenant turnover, anything that we want to know. So,
Yeah. So I've had exposure to Yardi, Entrata, and Resman, and I've also heard of AppFolio. We're not using AppFolio in any of our current assets, but it's interesting because the key is you guys running it. You need that streamline, and I think what you highlighted, maybe it was a little simplified, but if I'm a potential tenant and I have to log into something in order to get my lease done, in order to then file, having somebody in the background like put all that together, that's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah.
And so using this technology that integrates it all, and then I call it the customer experience. In our case, the owner experience is I want to be able to log in and go, boom, okay, here's our occupancy, here's all our numbers. I don't care what happens in the background, but and the tenant should feel the same way. It should be easy for them to go, hey, I'm going to log in once and I can put a ticket in, I can request information or sign a lease. So I think whatever reduces the most amount of friction is what we want to use. And so I'll tell you, I won't rank the ones I use because there's one definitely at the bottom, but but it's good to hear about other solutions. I've heard really good things about Appfolio. I think as companies get bigger, they start to have to use enterprise software, and as you use more enterprise software like Entrata, the user experience at the field is not as friendly. It's just because it has this aggregate of data. I think that's becomes a challenge, but yeah, it's really good stuff, and we're going to integrate a little bit more AI into ours, where like virtual assistant stuff, where maybe someone looking for a lease, they could schedule a tour through virtual tour, right?
Yeah.
Without human contact.
One thing I wanted to add to, just kind of on that same token, in regards to something being user friendly or kind of advancing the customer experience, is if you really think about it as a property manager, we're partnering with, the owner or the operator, we're partnering with the resident. And so we really look at it as a partnership. And so whatever can make communicating with our partners or interacting with our partners on a day-to-day basis easier is what we want to do. So kind of like what Mike said, in AppFolio, you have the chance to go in and look at your owner portal. So you can go and look at all the leases that get uploaded, all the reporting. AppFolio, we do a lot of our accounting through there as well. And that makes the partnership between Mike's team and my team a lot easier. Same thing on the resident side. Residents can go in and text us from AppFolio. They can check their rent balance. They can see when the next payment is due. They can see their lease. Those things make all the little difference when being able to communicate and try and advancing the partnership. We want residents to rent with us for a long time. We want owners and operators to buy and let us manage their assets for a long time. And so, whatever can make those processes easier is what we'll always try to do.
yeah. Hey, I want to kind of touch a little bit. Mike had mentioned AI. You had mentioned AI. How do you see the future in, technology on these platforms, specifically in Appfolio, right? Where is that system going, or any of the software systems going using AI moving forward?
Yeah, in my personal opinion, what I've seen so far, just in the industry and then with certain CRM, certain platforms, a lot of platforms have used AI to create like the marketing descriptions. So a lot of times you see the the nice long lengthy marketing description online on Zillow or Apartments.com. A lot of that is now being sourced through AI. Similarly, people are using like the chat box on their websites to communicate. So if you log on to a website and you see like a chat box, it's usually a virtual assistant or AI bot that you can communicate with to try to see if your question can be answered. For us personally at Atrium, I think it would be kind of a trial and error kind of thing with us because we love the customer experience. We love being face to face. We love going to meet people in person, having them come to our office. And so, although AI technology, is advancing, we still love the normality of it, and kind of having that face to face interaction. So, on some of these platforms, you'll see AI, via chatbots and marketing descriptions and being able to somewhat advanced communication with residents as they navigate leasing and virtual tours and things of that nature. But it's really a give and take. It really depends on what your goal is and what you're seeking to accomplish as an operator. And for us, we like to mix it in where we can, but we still love to have those interactions one on one.
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome.
Hey, I wanted to ask a question. So you mentioned a lot about the day-to-day activities. If we could back up a little bit, Mike and I are actively underwriting and looking to buy deals.
Yeah.
Tell me, why is it important to find and align with a property management company, maybe prior to us taking it down or taking over ownership? Because I don't think you want a phone call on day one of, hey, we just bought this property. Can you come manage it? Well, can you walk me through some good and bad experiences or some tips maybe for the other folks on the call of what that looks like?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is you want to be aligned as far as expectations. So a lot of times when I'm communicating with an owner who just bought an asset, I'm communicating, I'm saying, hey, what are your expectations from us from day one? Here are ours. I want to hear yours so we can be on the same page. And so a lot of times I like to understand, okay, if it's a value add deal, how to what level do you want to renovate these units? How quickly are you looking to renovate them? What are the market rents that you think you can get? A lot of our conversations are centered around, hey, what do you think about the area? Do you think we can achieve this rent amount in this area for this type of product? And so I'm giving a lot of feedback on, hey, I think in this location, in this zip code, we can get here, and this zip code we can get here. I don't think we can get here on this. And so we're kind of being, the honest piece of it. I would never advise an owner to buy a bad deal just because I wanted to manage it. I'll always be honest and upfront and say, hey, I think we can get you this, amount per month in rent, or I don't think we can at all. And so that's a give or take thing because I know brokers, they're selling deals and they got to get deals sold. And so a lot of times it's cool to have that third party management opinion to kind of give you the truth and the reality of the situation. Obviously, I want to look at it through an optimistic lens because I love Florida, I love Central Florida, I love the area, and I just love what we're doing and where we're growing. But I'll always be honest with operators about where deals stand, the location, and rent amounts. And that's a lot of what we're kind of communicating with them on a day-to-day basis about.
And
That's great.
I think that's so true because there's been a couple of deals over the last couple of years in Florida that we've looked at, not too far outside of the area that we own property in now. And I've called Joshua and said, hey, could you drive this for me? So when you're partnered with a good property management team, they have no problem going out and driving a property, giving you their opinion on the area, the market. If you're doing business with somebody, they become your partner, right? At some level. And you have that arrangement that people work for each other, and it's that whole team effect, right? Putting a good
Absolutely.
team together. So
Yeah,
Absolutely.
well, I was just gonna say, you mentioned something about the broker, their job is to sell you a property. And so their job is to make that the most attractive property on the planet at that moment. And
Absolutely.
so you as the buyer, we as the buyers, right? We also have investors. If we don't do our job and vet those rents, because they come up with the pro forma on that. So my first thing is I'm gonna call Joshua. Hey, this guy's telling me I can get $125 a lift by doing this. What do you think? Because at the end of the day, if you say yes, we can do it, well, I'm gonna hold you to that, right?
Absolutely.
If you're like, hey, I don't think we can get more than $50, well, let's plug that in, and maybe that deal isn't a good deal because we can't achieve the lift that we want, and at the end, the value that we need. So it's really important to partner again early to understand, the life cycle of that property ownership.
And here's something I'll add to that I think really helps and can help property managers in general is consistently, I would say at a minimum on a monthly basis, reviewing the market data. There's tons of companies out here that give you monthly reports. One of them that I use is ALN Market Data. It sends me a report for Orlando, Tampa, Gainesville, Lakeland, and I can just see where's occupancy at, where are average rents at compared to year on year, month to month. And so for me, when I'm assessing my own portfolio and kind of assessing my team, I'm able to see, okay, this is where the market is, this is where we're at. So we're doing good here. We need to pick it up here. I'm able to really let the numbers speak for themselves and kind of make informed decisions. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to investors, I say, hey, this is our average portfolio occupancy. This is our average rent. This is where the market is. Based on the deal that you just sent me, I think we can be here. And so I never want to overpromise and underdeliver. I always just want to tell the truth and be honest. And so I think people can see that we're educated in what we do and they trust us to help them make those decisions. So we take honor, we take pride in that.
Yeah, I love to hear the market data report because market by market it changes, block by block it changes. At
Absolutely.
the end of the day, sub-market. So I'm based here in Phoenix, and Phoenix has actually seen a rent decline. We've seen vacancy go up to about or go down, I should say, right? So we're at like 91, 92%. 6 months ago we were at 95. That's a pretty big swing. And so knowing those changes and being aware of that, well, if I'm buying a deal here, I better reassess my expectations. I may not ever get to 95. I might need to plan, hey, 92 is really like 100%. And so that changes your revenue, it changes your expectations, your outcome. So yeah, really good stuff.
Awesome. Hey, Joshua. So, tenants call up, they have a repair. What do you constitute, or what is your guidelines for an emergency versus just a leaky faucet?
Yeah. For us, we kind of just look at it, fire, flood, or blood. It's kind of the three things that we we say in regards to emergency. So, if there's a fire, obviously, that has to be put out as soon as possible. We got to call the fire department and have them come out. Flood. A lot of times you have random leaks that can, be addressed with a quick fix, but sometimes units do flood. The toilet overflows. I've seen where, we've had an older property where pipes were very eroded and, through the tub, sewer started leaking. And so it was poop all over the floor, all over the ground. And so I've pretty much seen everything. And so when it comes to kind of like those three facets, if somebody's bleeding, somebody's hurt at a property, that's another emergency issue that we have to address immediately. So those three facets really dictate what an emergency is. And again, we want to solve the problem as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, and as cost effective as possible. And so trying to navigate those three things on a day-to-day basis is a challenge that we love to face because a lot of times I feel like we come to the correct solution. We always want to do the right thing and take care of our residents and our owners. And so we just enjoy being able to do that in those emergency situations. Sometimes they're fun, sometimes they're not, but usually you get a cool story out of it, man. We live to tell the next manager what happened. So it's kind of a cool thing sometimes.
Yeah.
So
I sometimes, I'm sorry, Mike, I just want to make a comment that sometimes tenants call up and their idea of an emergency is different than your idea, right?
Yeah.
I like what you said about blood or fire, that's an emergency, right? But sometimes tenants call up and they can't cook their roast for the holiday or something because the stove's out. But unfortunately, that just is not a emergency. As much as we would like to, as owner operators, make sure everything's perfect, because my mission as an operator is that I provide safe and secure housing for my tenants.
Yeah.
So that's why we buy value add and turn them around, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. I've heard the crazy stories from residents. Excuse me. Residents will call and say, hey, my light bulb is out. I need somebody to come fix it quick. Or hey, my AC filter is dirty. I need you to come take care of it ASAP. And so it's just little things, people are used to different customer service levels. And one of our kind of mantras as well, our core values is order the pizza. And we got that from a company called Zappos. So residents are asked for things that are technically outside of the property manager wheelhouse, but we'll try to go above and beyond to deliver it for them. So it's funny the calls that you get. We try to do our best to abide by them and make them feel safe and secure, kind of like you said. But it is funny, man. The industry, you hear all types of things on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I was just going to say you're taking those 3, 4 a.m. phone calls sometimes, which hopefully they're not emergencies, but usually at that time of day something's not going right, and it's one of the reasons we want to use third party management is I don't want that phone call.
Yeah.
We're relying on you guys to deliver that service, right? And if it is just a leaky faucet, to you guys' point, sometimes it's subjective. Like, well, I can wait till the morning. Would you guys set like a threshold? Hey, within 24 hours, will I use the app like you talked about, right? File my work order in, and then do you guys turn that around? At least communicate with the tenant and say, hey, this is going to get handled here.
Yeah. So kind of how we train our staff is to over communicate
Hmm.
with situations like that. So if a work order comes in, I immediately, I immediately train my team to assign it to a vendor. Once it's assigned, I have them call the resident and say, hey, so and so vendor just received your work order. They're going to contact you to schedule a time. Once it's been scheduled, we can communicate on that folio website through the messaging system. I have them set the vendor set the time, set the date. And then once it's set and they go out to meet the appointment, I have them do a follow call. Hey, can you just call the resident and make sure that everything was taken care of, that their services and their expectations were met with the issue? Because a lot of times, that little miscommunication can happen where the resident feels like, oh, this wasn't fully completed, or they said they were going to come back and do this. And the vendors would be like, oh, no, I'm waiting on owner approval, or the resident said they didn't want this to happen. And so you just want to button up all loose ends when it comes to communication. So usually that's how we handle a work order or a maintenance request is just communicate from start to finish. And then once it's done, just to reassess and reconfirm that, hey, this is taken care of properly, just to button up all loose ends on communication.
Yeah, perfect. Love it. Love it. By the way, if anyone listening on the call has a question, you can type it into the chat or you can type it into the Q&A section. So we'll be happy to address those. One thing I wanted to highlight is a lot of folks, again, and some investors are like, I'm going to manage this 10 unit, 20 unit myself. I'm just going to do that because it's how hard can it be, right? And I
Yeah.
think the last 35 minutes we've been talking about all the things, and there's a whole bunch of stuff you haven't even mentioned, right? Like let's talk about paying utility bills and handling the bank and paying the mortgage. There's so much that's involved. What's a little bit of I don't want to say advice, but what would you suggest if someone's like, hey, I think I'm going to do this on my own? What would you say?
My first thing that I would tell them is don't. Like, I'm just being honest, don't do that. Like, a lot of people think that that is the best way to go. If you're going to do it as a full-time job, I understand. But I think if you're not willing to be able to dedicate the right amount of time, the right amount of education, to understanding the industry, just understanding what it takes, then I would recommend that you actually don't do that. Because you'll be stressing yourself out. And I've seen it so many times. A lot of the takeovers we do are for people who wanted to self-manage and they thought that, oh, I'll just hire this somebody part-time to help me out, do some leasing, some admin work. And while they still have a job and still have a family, they're like, oh my gosh, what am I getting myself into? This is not what I thought. And so I always tell people, hire professionals. I don't try to do my own taxes. I don't try to cure my own self when I'm sick. I don't try to, fix my own oil. Like I go to the professional and I get it done. So that's why you have property managers, hire the professionals, hire the people that one own properties themselves. That's a big thing about us as a property management company. We actually own some of our own assets. And so we understand what it's like to have to pay a mortgage. We understand what it's like to see the taxes increase in Florida, as everybody has. We understand what it looks like to have the insurance increase. And so we feel that pain. And so we don't take it lightly. I think that helps us and gives us a competitive advantage when managing a property. And so all those little things, kind of add up. But in theory, again, if they're not willing to give 100% of their time to it and they're not willing to sacrifice their weekends, to make sure they have the highest quality tenant doing a showing, because Saturdays are the best days for showing. That's when residents don't have work and they can actually schedule, morning showings to see properties and be able to move. And so a lot of times you're going to have to give up a Saturday or Saturday morning. If you're not willing to do all of those things, then I recommend that you don't try to self-manage and that you just hire a third-party manager like Atrium or whoever to be able to, take care of your asset.
And what markets are you guys in, Joshua?
So right now we cover all of Central Florida and we're also in Richmond, Virginia. At the moment, we're willing to expand to anywhere that is a direct flight from us. But Florida is really our bread and butter and kind of where we built our major stomping ground.
Do you guys have like a size of units that you kind of go a range that you serve?
Yeah, so really, it's a broad range, really from 8 to 300. I think our biggest asset is 277 units. That's a deal that's under construction, and we have a lot of lease ups, Class A lease ups going on right now. But we handle anything. We have a division that does the boutique multifamily, and then we have a separate division that does the multifamily, the on-site traditional. staffing. So we really can handle both. We really built our reputation on the boutique stuff because a lot of the bigger companies, the Great Stars, the Range Waters, whatever, they don't have I would say, the formula down for managing these smaller assets. And so that's really where we picked up on, and we're able to kind of build a name for ourselves. I think we've done a really good job with that. But, we like to do the Class A lease ups as well. We like to manage, those bigger deals and be able to prove that we can perform. So it really ranges, from any size for us. As long as we feel like we can handle it adequately, we'll take it on.
Yeah, awesome.
How about standards? What are your standards that you have in place for tenants, right? Screening, showing, marketing, what kind of standards do you have in place for those types of daily day-to-day activities?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, kind of the three metrics that we base our residents off of. Number one being credit score. So, we like to have our residents to have a minimum of a 600 credit score. For us, that's the threshold that we're, willing to cooperate and do business and transact at. The next one is the income requirement that we have. So, it's usually we require the resident to make 3 times the monthly rent. So, if the rent is $1,000, they need to have a gross income of $3,000 per month. And I think that's pretty fair and that's pretty, standard for the market. But that's kind of the second metric that we have. And if it's like a couple, then it's the combined income. But we really look at that to make sure that they can afford the unit. The last thing we want is, to put somebody in that can't afford to pay it on a monthly basis just for the sake of having, a unit not be vacant. And then the last thing is we look at their rental history. So we go in and check, if they made on-time payments in the past, if they've had eviction within the last 7 years. We're able to see, all their account balances for their credit cards, student loans, to see if they even pay their bills on time. A lot of times that's a great indicator of if they'll pay their rent, if they're on time with all their, other debt obligations. And so those are things that we're able to check and kind of just have an idea on when improving the resident. And then once those three things are, marked and checked and qualified, we'll contact the previous landlord and just kind of do, a quick survey and say, hey, how is this person as a resident? And sometimes we'll contact the employer just to verify that their employment is straight and they're consistent with that. So we really try to do our best in breeding these residents and making sure that they're the quality person that we want to have living at our properties.
Awesome. Well, guys, we've been running for about 45 minutes. Any last questions from the audience?
I've been monitoring.
Joshua, oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, I've been monitoring the board, waiting for some questions to pop up, but I think
Yeah.
Joshua's done a pretty good job fielding questions so far from us.
We've
Hey,
been
I'm
pretty
always wondering.
informative or entertaining. So,
Yeah.
hey, Joshua, how do people get in touch with you if they want to talk to you directly about management, or maybe they own an asset in Florida or in Virginia?
Yeah, so the best way to connect with me is via LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn every single day. I'm posting, constantly connecting with people. You can reach me out to me on there via direct message, and I shoot you my personal email. You can also contact our office. We try to post our office number everywhere, and so I'm gonna put that in the chat for anybody who needs it. But LinkedIn is the number one place for find us. We're very active. We have a lot of things going on there, and so we're always having to connect on that platform.
Nice. Thanks. And Mike, how about you? How do people get a hold of you if they want to reach out and talk about any multifamily or investment opportunities you have going on?
Yeah, awesome. And I'll put my information here in the chat as well. So it's Mike Angelo. NimbleCapitalGroup.com is our Facebook. Facebook is our website. You can find me on all the other ones at Multifamily Mike. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And yeah, again, I'll put my information down here. But happy to talk about investing, education, multifamily all day long. That's what I do, and we love it. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you guys being here. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, you can go to resilienceequity.com. That's our website. Or you can reach me directly. My email address is mike@resilienceequity.com. So anybody has any questions, anything we can talk about offline, don't hesitate to reach out to us. If we can give you guidance or direction in anything that you're doing, don't be shy and just ask. So thanks everybody for being here tonight. If you guys hang around for a minute, we'll end the recording and let everybody exit the room.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys for having me.
Thanks.